Well, good morning. Actually, it's afternoon now. Still feels like morning, I guess, because of the time change last night, and we fell back an hour, so it should actually feel later. Anywho, it's a beautiful sunny Sunday. Just got back from taking Kevin the dog. Where are you, Kevin? Taking that little boy for a walk, and he was absolutely ecstatic. Had some lunch, and I'm now just spending the rest of the day catching up on all the YouTube channels that I follow. I did some work in the backyard trying to get things prepared for winter. Drained my hose, put it away, covered up the patio furniture, cleaning some stuff up, storing some stuff in the shed, and I think we're about as ready as we can get around here. I've got the winter tires on. I've had them on for a while now. I always do that mid-October. This is the first year in a long time I can remember we didn't get any snow, at least not in where I live in Ingersoll. Didn't see any snow at all during October. So it's been a really nice warm year. Just a bit of an update. I'm feeling good today. Got up and had a healthy breakfast. Went for a walk. Did sleep in because, it's Sunday and I can. And probably sleep in tomorrow too. Because now that I'm unemployed, I can do that. I realized that my previous videos didn't really get into a whole lot of detail about Mark's death. It was very traumatic, and easily the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. He was in the ICU for 24 days. He went in to the ER at Alexandra Hospital in Ingersoll on November 18th, and he was admitted that evening. And that was a Monday, and that whole entire weekend before, he was really, really tired. He had been told by his doctor that he had walking pneumonia. And I said, what the heck is that? What are they doing for it? Nothing, really. So he was really tired and slept on the couch pretty much all weekend long. When I went to work on Monday morning, he was sleeping and I didn't want to wake him up because I thought he needed the rest. He did give me a call. He had gotten up, gone out for a bit of a drive, got himself some breakfast at A&W, gave me a call, and then I didn't hear back from him again the rest of the day. I tried to call him and there was no answer. When I got home from work, and I could track his truck on the MyChev app on my phone, so I could see that it was at Alexandra Hospital, which wasn't surprising because of his throat issues and choking issues. He was at the ERs of many different hospitals several times, sometimes multiple times a week. So that wasn't too much of a surprise. I got home and I found that his phone, he had forgotten it and left it on the coffee table. And again, I wasn't too concerned until around 7 p.m. when I got a phone call from Alexandra Hospital, and it was him calling from the hospital phone telling me that they were admitting him, I believe for the pneumonia. Mark had multiple health issues. He had COPD. He was a heavy smoker, lifetime smoker since his early teens, and wasn't about to give it up. He tried a couple of times over the years, but it never really stuck. He had congestive heart failure, which he'd been hospitalized for for a week the previous summer, the summer of 2023, and then again in the summer of 2024 for another week. He had diabetes, which was largely untreated, and I 100% blame his family doctor for that. So yeah, he had a lot going on. I went to the ER at Alexandra Hospital, brought him some stuff, some clothes and his phone and a charger and a few snacks that I thought he'd want. He asked me to go get him a strawberry milkshake from McDonald's, which I did. And we answered some questions for the nurses. He was very sleepy and he was grumpy. And he wasn't feeling well. He was feeling crappy. And at one point the nurse said to him, "You be nice to your wife." And so after, I think I was there for about half an hour or so. And I said, he was just being on the grumpy side. And I said, "Okay, well, you're grumpy. I'm gonna go home now, and you have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow morning." He called me, I'm gonna say around 11ish, and he wasn't making much sense. He wanted me to bring him some stuff from home, some nasal spray and some other things. And I said, "Okay, like, where am I even taking this? Will they let me in the hospital at that time?" Like, obviously it wasn't visiting hours. And he had me on speakerphone, and I heard a nurse in the background say, "Even if she brings that stuff, we're not going to be able to give it to you because the doctor has to approve it." So I said to the nurse in the background, I said, "So is there any sense in me coming tonight?" And she said no. And I said, "Okay, Mark, I'll see you in the morning." And he was very upset. I went to bed, and I had my phone on, the ringer was on vibrate. I don't know why. It should have been on. But the hospital had tried to call me, I think about 5 times. And at 2 a.m., there was a loud banging on my front door. Bang, bang, bang. It startled me right out of bed. So I ran downstairs, and there were 2 police officers, and I thought, "Oh my God, he's died." They told me I needed to call Judy at the hospital immediately. And it was about my husband. So I figured when they said that he hadn't died, but something had happened. I did call the nurse, and she said, you need to come to the ER, the ICU right away. Your husband has collapsed, and we've had to give him CPR, and now he's on a ventilator. I didn't really comprehend what all that meant. I got to the hospital, and he was not conscious. He was hooked up to a ventilator, helping him breathe, going down his throat. I could see the contents of his stomach, which was the strawberry milkshake that I had brought him. His stomach had to be pumped. And they were transporting him to Woodstock ICU immediately. The ambulance was just getting there. And I watched them load him into the ambulance. And I had looked around his room, and I said, and I gathered up the stuff that I could find, and I said, "What happened to his clothes?" And they said, "They're garbage. We had to cut them off him." I called my friend Connie and asked her to meet me at Woodstock Hospital, which she immediately did because she's an amazing friend. And I think it was around 3:30 a.m. by the time we got there. They wouldn't let me in to see him. I waited around for about an hour and a half. About 5 a.m. a nurse came out and said, "You can stay if you want, but you might as well go home and get some sleep and come back at 11 a.m., which is when visiting hours start in the ICU, and you can see him then." They said, "We've gotten him in and settled, but you're not going to be able to see him for a while." So I went home, didn't get very much sleep, called my president at the union and told him what was going on, and went back to the hospital, and honestly don't remember much more about that day. It's a lot of a blur. And the next 23 days were a lot of a blur. But I was there every day. I still worked. I was still going into work and then leaving and going to the hospital and spending my evenings there. And I was absolutely exhausted and just prayed every day that he would wake up. And he did. He woke up once on December 6th. And when I walked in, the ICU staff were very excited. And honestly, it was the most hope I'd felt that whole time. His eyes were open, and it almost looked like he was like looking at the stars. I kept talking to him. I mean, I talked to him all the time, but I sat right beside him, held his hand, asked him to squeeze my hand, asked him to blink. He would do involuntary things like a lot of yawning and coughing. He did not respond to any requests for squeezing my hand or blinking. And they had taken him off the ventilator. And he was breathing on his own. So it was all great signs. I FaceTimed his family with him so they could say hello. And, I was hoping that hearing their voices would help him be able to respond. And that was that. The next day, he got put on the ventilator again. And that was the last sign of any kind of consciousness. 6 days later, he passed at 5:34 a.m. on December 12th. And I'll talk more about that day later. Happy Sunday.